Welcome to Decoding the Data Ecosystem, a podcast with valuable insights, inspiring stories, and practical advice to guide you on your journey through the world of omics research and how the NIH Common Fund data ecosystem can support that journey. I'm your host, Dr. Alyssa Dillman, and I'm the Training and Engagement Director of the CFDE Training Center. My background's in bioinformatics, and I've been working in bioinformatics and data science training and engagement space for almost the past 15 years. I'm really passionate about lowering the barriers of entry for these fields through creative engagement activities such as these podcasts. Now let's get to the show.
All right, hello everyone. So today I will be talking to David Dorr, the Division Head of Informatics, Clinical Epidemiology, and Translational Data Science, Department of Medicine, and the Chief Research Information Officer at the Oregon Health and Science University. And I'm also talking to Andrea Krussel, who is the Director of Education and Workforce Development in the Office of Health Information and Data Science at WashU Medicine. Hello to both of you. I'm really excited today to talk to you both a little bit about Bridge to AI and your role in the program. So can you tell me a little bit more about Bridge to AI?
Yes, we'd be happy to, and thanks for having us. So Bridge to AI is an effort from the NIH Common Fund to really do a couple things related to AI readiness. Right now, we have many AI models being developed, and the data on which they're developed isn't really necessarily ready or broad or diverse enough for the needs to meet all the outcomes that we want to solve for AI. And so this program creates a bridge center to really advance the best practices around development of machine learning, to help with training, to help with data standards and tools, and also establishes 4 data generation projects that really focus on different aspects of where we think AI will have the biggest impact. For us, we represent the precision public health component, and our specific element is voice. So voice as a biomarker for AI models is potentially amazing, but it also needs to be recorded and created in ways that can be standardized and reproducible. And when people give their voice to these kinds of projects, that they're absolutely understanding how their voice might be used in sort of the generation of machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and I would just also add that that voice is pretty powerful on its own, but then when you're looking at all the other data that physicians encounter day to day, including imaging and electronic health record data, it really can help paint a picture for predicting disease.
Awesome, thank you for that summary. Can you tell me a little bit more about what each of you's role is in the voice program? Andrea, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I'm a co-investigator on the training, recruitment, and mentoring team, which is part of the people pillar in the Bridge to AI and on our Voice to AI project. So what we do is we have created a competency-based framework so that we can train a variety of personas, if you will, how to use AI in the context of voice. And so it's very similar to some of the work that I do at WashU in workforce development.
Yes, and I am the co-principal investigator with Yael Ben-Susan and Olivier Elemento and several others. And I also focus on training, recruitment, and mentorship. Interestingly, I also have a strong history of standards and interoperability and using data from multiple different sources. So I'm really helping in multiple aspects of this really fun but somewhat complex process in this study. So it's, for me, what I like the most is we spend a lot of time developing this data set, getting people to offer their voice up, and then our part in this specifically is to actually get people to use these data to start to develop models and understand where they can really advance science, and also what they want to watch out for as they're building these models.
And Andrea, how did you end up getting involved in the voice program?
Sure. Well, one of the other co-PIs, Philip Payne, is the director of the Institute for Informatics, Data Science, and Biostatistics, which is our academic arm of the Office of Health Information and Data Science, which is such a mouthful. So he brought me into the project because my background is in education and in competency-based education. And I do a lot of workforce development in our institute around data science and informatics. And so he brought me into this so that I could help build this framework that we've been talking about. And then also I have a background in delivering programs and working with lots of different students and trainees.
And David, how did you sort of end up in the voice program?
Interestingly, Philip Payne also brought me into this because we had written another proposal for precision public health focused on rural health. And as part of the Common Fund intent here, they actually brought different projects together. So Yael had written one for voice and from University of South Florida. And they said, boy, your training, recruitment, and mentoring plan that you had written, Drs. Dorr and Payne, is really great, and we want to figure out how to use this broadly in the project. So I've been getting to know these collaborators throughout the course of the project, which has been actually amazing. I've learned so much from all the different people and what they do. We have Cornell Medical represented, we have MIT represented, we have some sites in Canada as well that help with ethics. So it's been an incredible learning process as we've sort of melded our different groups.
And we've learned a lot about voice.
So I would like to ask a question about voice. How did this idea of, your voice, which is something we sort of use all the time and don't even think about, like how did this come about as an idea for exploring as a biomarker in and of itself?
Well, we have to recognize that Yael Ben-Susan, who is our contact PI, is passionate about this because she is a otolaryngologist. So a medical specialist who focuses on vocal cords. And she herself had a medical issue with her vocal cord, having been a professional singer and then not being able to do that after a while related to some nodules that she developed. And so she was passionate about that. And she learned in the course of her medical training and her practice how much struggle there is sometimes in really both diagnosing the different conditions related to voice, but how much promise there was in the use of machine learning and AI to do that earlier and better, and actually to provide help with treatment for people who might have a condition like dysphonia, which is where people kind of slowly lose their voice over time. As part of that, it's expanded from just voice, which is like, the production of the sounds through the vocal cord, to speech, which are the sounds that are made and a little bit about their meaning, and then language, right, which is often what we think about when we think about voice sounds that we record have all of the three of those. The language really has the meaning, and we can think about neurologic issues like dementia or other conditions that might be able to be diagnosed with that. Psychiatric conditions like depression or anxiety. And from speech and other things, we can diagnose many different kinds of conditions as well. So it's such a rich biomarker. And to be honest, the other issue was many companies had started to invest in using voice because it is somewhat available and there was lots of voice recordings out there. The challenge was, of course, those voice recordings didn't meet the standard. They weren't AI ready. And so we worried about the kinds of models that would be developed from them.
It's interesting that you mentioned that voice is not just about sort of how you sound and how you say things, but sort of the patterns of speech, and that those patterns of speech, if I'm understanding correctly, are the kinds of things that you're looking for in some of these conditions that are, like Parkinson's, depression, things that are more neuro related versus like say respiratory related. Um, did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the biomarkers in voice and speech and language are so many, and you have to really know how to use them well to based on the problem you're trying to solve. Respiratory is an excellent one because the sounds of air passing through the vocal cords can also be recorded and from the lungs and then used to diagnose different cardiovascular conditions or fluid on the lungs, for instance, or airway constriction. So it's quite a amazing tool if we can use it well.
Is it hard to sort of extract all these different aspects, right? Because it's not just about sound, but how those patterns are all used together, but also the pauses in sound and all of the meanings of the sounds we make. So like, is there like lots of different ways this singular data has to be broken down or processed?
Well, I can say that we have been able to release feature data sets, which has components of the voice, but the raw data has been very complicated in terms of being able to release that so that people can play with that data. I'm sure that Dave can elaborate on that more than
Yeah.
I.
Yeah, I mean, and part of that is just practically exactly what you say. Like, how do you get from these waveforms with the voice um, to reliable models and interpretation from the audio? And actually, a lot of the work that's been done so far, which we've published on, have been getting from, okay, we did a very careful job in assessing and creating a protocol and then assessing the quality of the voice that was collected. And now, how do we translate those markers of quality to investigators? The data are technically AI ready, even for the voice raw audio, but there's a lot of learning that even an accomplished data scientist needs to do to use those waveforms well and pull out those features. So one thing we've done is help them by identifying some of the features that are likely to be beneficial and actually built up a number of kind of knowledge base related elements that will help people tap into those more easily. We also teach about this through our hackathons. One thing we found incredibly helpful is actually to bring clinical people and data scientists together to really so they can learn together about, okay, what do you listen for? What do you hear? And then they try and map that into the biomarkers that are important.
So you mentioned hackathons, which is my favorite subject. I'm curious to hear more on how do you sort of bring all these folks with very disparate backgrounds and sort of, technical expertise together to work on a data set that sounds really complex? Like how do they even work together? How do they have the same language? Like how do you sort of help that interaction?
We're pretty fortunate in that regard because we come from informatics, the world of informatics. And as Dr. Philippine always says, like he didn't wake up one morning wanting to be an informatician. Most people come to the table with very different backgrounds. So we're used to working with people with public health, computer science, data science, clinical, and basic science backgrounds. So that I think made it a little, I don't want to say easier, but it helped us design the curriculum so that we could consider the different people that would be sitting at the table doing this type of research. And so what we did was we identified personas. So we essentially identified clinical and computational folks and how they might be using it. And then we built the curriculum around that. And then also, one of the great things about this project is that it's very interdisciplinary. So actually bringing together people of different backgrounds is of value because they can learn from one another and provide their expertise in analyzing these data.
Yeah, as an example to that, one of the hackathon sort of teachers, I guess, the main people is Dr. Maria Powell, who has a background in speech and language pathology, and like really can talk authoritatively about the voice markers and the illnesses people get. She's so thoughtful about, let's focus on what are the real problems we're trying to solve here, so that when we get into the data, we're immediately honed in on what's important. The other thing we've honestly done is given people some sense of the variability in the data and what's in there and what the types of data that we collected. And then we actually asked them to be creative and think about, given a problem space, a challenge, what might be important things that you'd want to focus in on? What are problems that you could think of together that you'd want to solve, and then how you might solve those? And that's a really fun exercise that allows them, before they even do much with the data, to really conceptualize how they might build important models or useful models, perhaps.
Speaking of sort of training and learning and hackathons, or at least I tend to think of hackathons as potential, parts of a training program. So I know that, a big part of Bridge to AI's focus in general is preparing the next generation of researchers. But what does that specifically look like for you all at Voice?
Well, it definitely involves a lot of collaboration. So, while we definitely can bring, informatics, data science, and AI to the table, we couldn't do this without working with the professionals and the investigators that we're working with on the side of voice and otolaryngology and the clinical experts. So I think, and we're also relatively we're relatively used to working in fields that are constantly evolving. So we're sort of trying to always be ahead of what's coming rather than falling behind. So really, it's being very future ready and teaching our students to be future ready and building things that are trustworthy. So teaching folks how to use AI and other innovations in a way that's beneficial and trustworthy versus the opposite.
And to that end, we have tried to scale the curriculum to be useful at many different stages of learning. So wherever people are in their training, so from undergraduates to clinical trainees at the undergraduate and graduate level, to graduates, to early career faculty. And we just adapt the programs a little bit, and the curriculum, we have a modular curriculum that's based on skills and competencies, but we try and, for each of those personas, really demonstrate the adaptability of it for where people are, meeting people where they're at, which enables us to really take the curriculum and apply it to many different scenarios. So one thing we did now a couple summer ago was create a summer school. So this was undergraduate, mostly data science people and some clinical trainees at different levels. And they were at 4 different sites, and we built a curriculum that was sort of virtual for them, but then they had an in-person hackathon as part of that. So that's one thing. But we also have post-doctoral fellows that are at multiple sites, including one from Oregon Health and Science University that just had a Frontiers paper published that I'm told is their top altmetric scored paper of all time from their journal. That was that was about differentiating vocal cord lesion types, like benign and malignant vocal cord lesions from the voice, right? That might be a great one. So we have all these different learners that are part of the program. We also try and do cross-pollination across the different bridge sites. And so we participated quite a bit in different activities where they have learners and offer our curriculum out to them, or you can go to our hackathon no matter where you're from as part of the face-to-face meetings. In addition, we've been talking to Aim Ahead, which, focuses on really trying to build up that AI workforce even more, including from places that may not have the data science curriculum historically, and try and bring to a wide variety of different learners. So that's we're still hoping for that one to go further, but really thinking about these different learners and where they are and the roles they might be playing.
And we recently did a hackathon following our annual Voice Symposium, which will be in May in St. Pete, just for anyone interested. But we recently had a hackathon following the symposium as an additional event, and we had the traditional like computer science folks, and they got together and they had that data and they were ready to solve problems. We had another track though that was for people who didn't have a programming background. And so we basically, during the hackathon, we worked with that group and gave them background on the data set. We showed them how to access it. And then we kind of gave them some tools so that they too had, they had the autonomy to also get into the data, even though that wasn't necessarily their background. So we provide, we can do all kinds of things in terms of offering the curriculum to different levels and learners.
I love that. You've mentioned, needing different kinds of skills and competencies. So what kinds of skills and competencies are most important for researchers that want to utilize the data that is being created by voice?
Well, I'd say that one of the top things that we've been working on, regardless of your computational level, is just the ethics and trust building behind working in AI, and making sure that the data is transparent, and that it is something that can be democratized. So we really want people of all levels to be able to get their hands in it.
Yeah, I would say related to that is the ability to really think through, what problem you want to solve, and as it relates to the data that you have, right? So the capabilities of that data, the limitations of it, and really think through the process where you're like, am I asking the right kind of question for these data? And then preparing your approach so that at the end of it, you're more likely to have a solution that will be strong in its ability to do what you want. And I think historically, that's actually one of the problems that the AI, machine learning AI development community has sort of been criticized for fairly or unfairly, which is like, they're taking all this data and then they're just applying techniques to it. And either the problem wasn't important, or the data, more likely, the data wasn't adequate wasn't fit for purpose, say, to solve the problem that they were looking for. And so then, it's either not useful or potentially even harmful when when you try and put it into practice. And we don't want that to happen, right? So I think because voice could be used today or tomorrow, and in fact, in many ways is being recorded so frequently now as part of ambient scribes, AI ambient scribes, or others, that we want to be very thoughtful about making sure whatever models are being developed with this sort of ethical, fair, trustworthy set of principles behind it, and they're considering the pros and cons.
And we are, there are quite a few people that don't have a data science background, like our clinical, more, clinically leaning folks, they come with really great use cases. And then we do have, we teach them about the data science life cycle. So, maybe they won't become like experts in R overnight, but we show them how, like, the data science life cycle. So, where do we get the data? How do we analyze the data? Where do we store the data? How do we share the data? So by taking them just through that life cycle, it at least gives people an understanding of how it should look.
You'd mentioned ethics, and there being potential dangers around data getting misinterpreted and misused. So is there ethics modules as part of the training that you all do?
Yes, quite a few actually. That the ethical impact is sort of threaded throughout the considerations. Our ethics team is really exceptional. Vardit Revitsky from now the Hastings Center and her colleagues have really a broad view of ethical impact in a pragmatic sense. And so they've been exceptional in sort of thinking through these and asking the community. So it's not just a one-way communication. There's actually bidirectional communication and adaptation. And Andrea's going to tell me that the other people have been working on that.
No pressure. My problem is that I'm going to butcher everyone's last names, and so as far as the ethics goes, there was a lot of consideration in terms of how to set up the data collection and how we're protecting the privacy, but then also threaded throughout our curriculum. So the same experts who kind of were behind the data set, the ethics behind the data set, they also worked with us on building the curriculum out.
I'll just say the other ethics person is J.C. Belize Pipon from Simon Fraser University. He's really an exceptional leader in this space as well, in addition to Vardit. And one thing we've done with ethics as well is part of getting access to the data requires some immediate sort of training and reflection as they go through PhysioNet, which is currently storing our data. There's some educational models that they have to do to get access to the various levels of data, and the control and restriction gets higher as there's more released in the data.
So we've talked a lot about how diverse the data set is, but also how diverse sort of the skill sets and the people also needs to be there. So how do you all end up being able to recruit such diverse folks to be engaged with this program? What's your special sauce?
Well, I could speak to when we did our summer school, we had 4 different sites, and each site recruited students. Now I can speak for so it was Weill Cornell, it was University of South Florida, which is our primary site, and then Oregon Health and Science, which is where Dave is from, and then WashU, where I'm from. And OHSU and WashU, we both have another NIH grant. It's an R25 for building, basically building a data science field, a pipeline, because we're trying to recruit more people in the field and get people excited about data science and informatics. And so those programs are pretty successful, and so we were able to kind of integrate the summer school with our existing internship program, and our, I don't know about the other sites, but our R25, traditionally we bring in hundreds of applications, and so we just kind of added this in, and we were able to recruit that way. In terms of how we recruit, that's a whole other conversation, that involves, we have our own dedicated recruiter, and we go all over the country, and locally we do lots of events. So I'd be happy to go into more detail, but really we already kind of had the infrastructure, and so we were able to recruit great people.
So it sounds like you have done tons and tons of different kinds of training, different groups of folks in training. I'd be curious if either of you, or maybe both of you, have sort of a story or an example of how these training programs or mentoring programs really affected a particular person's career path.
Well, I can speak for our R25 program, which also, by the way, we had some of those art. I have an example. So our training program, our internship for summer students, we recruited a current student at WashU, and he became a part of that program. Then he worked in in the lab of Dr. Payne. Then we're talking about pipeline development. He applied for and got into our PhD program, which only has 5 slots. And then he ended up being one of the teaching assistants for the Bridge to AI summer school because he had gotten that really strong background. And so it was wonderful to have him on board because, he couldn't really apply to be a student at that point. So we were happy to have him help out. And then, of course, we had a few other of our PhD students participating. So it was a really nice community, and they ended up mentoring quite a few of the other students that participated in that program.
Yeah, and I'll just say that Phil Jenkins, who's our postdoctoral fellow here with, this project, he actually came in, it's a collaboration with our T15 from the National Library of Medicine. So he came into the program, not really sure what he wanted to do in informatics necessarily, found this since he had a background clinically in the area, and then published this highly cited altmetric paper. And so we're very excited. This has really sort of shaped his career and kicked it off. We have also seen people, go on to graduate school and get connected in just the way that Yale, or that Andrea has talked about. Yale just sent something out about many examples of this going on. So we're so excited that people take this initial educational opportunity and then just use it to step up to additional training.
We were recently in Taipei for the MedInfo meeting, which is an international informatics health meeting that takes place every couple years. And we were presenting on our competency framework and how we developed that for Bridge to AI. And one of our students that had participated in the program just happened to be at the meeting doing some similar work, but not necessarily aligned with voice AI. And so she was able to stand up and provide some testimonials, and we had lots of really great questions from the audience that only a student who participated could answer. So it's just really exciting to see that things like this can lead to growth in other areas.
Do you have a publication or somewhere that people can look for these competencies that you just mentioned?
I am glad you asked. Well, we do have an accepted publication in Frontiers Digital Health that it's been accepted, and it should be published relatively soon. So as soon as I have information on that, I'd be happy to share it with you, and you could add it to these notes.
Awesome. Do you have sort of like a 50,000 foot view of sort of that publication?
Sure. So we explain how we took informatics competencies that were defined essentially for graduate school in this 2012 American Medical Informatics Association white paper. And then we identified data science competencies through the Edison framework and a few other frameworks that exist, and then combine that with some updated informatics competencies for AI so basically we kind of took all of those and put them together for this specific project. And we talk about how we did that in the paper and how we identified the personas, the people involved, and then we provide examples as well. So that will be forthcoming.
I am really excited to read that, actually. That sounds really cool. I love geeking out about competencies and frameworks.
I can talk competencies all day.
So I did want to sort of ask, so again, Bridge to AI as a whole has sort of a focus on training, but is there something that's sort of unique about voice that really kind of shines in this training space?
Well, everyone's a musician on this project. I will tell you that. There's so much talent.
Andrea, what is your musical talent?
Soprano too.
Oh, David?
I play the piano, but I also joined the karaoke. That's actually literally, we don't we don't organize the karaoke. It's for the more basic science functional genomics project called CM4AI, which is so interesting. Creativity, I think, is sort of, music and creativity and mathematics go together so beautifully. But it is true, there are a lot of absolutely amazing musicians in this.
You
I would
must have really fun happy hour activities.
The
wonderful
karaoke is
group.
crazy. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
I would say though that there's a lot of creativity and a lot of passion around voice. There's so much passion amongst our colleagues who work in the voice space, and it's really exciting to work with them and come together and bring our backgrounds. And there's so many different sites represented as well. So it's nice to have colleagues from all over now, all over the country and Canada and beyond.
So I did want to ask a quick question. Actually, this has been floating around in my head now. You'd mentioned rural health, and I'm really curious about, if there is this ability to just record your voice to, potentially capture things that normally you'd have to, travel pretty far to see like an expert neurologist to get a diagnosis for. Do you really think that this could impact rural health?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. We were just talking about this yesterday because in many ways, Dr. Jenkins' paper about diagnosis of nodules and whether they're malignant or benign is like a classic case for rural health because you have to travel pretty far to get a formal evaluation sometimes by an ENT, and actually access right now is a challenge in many specialties. So the idea that you could do early screening of that kind and then sort of figure out when people could get seen, probably all the people would need to get seen because the models are not quite good enough for definitive diagnosis in any stage, but that is exactly the intent, is to allow that kind of early screening, get people prioritized, and bring them in. And when we talked about what's the use case that we think is sort of ready for the next big project, that is exactly the one that we talked about: telemedicine for early screening for different conditions to help triage and address those issues. So I do think that's an amazing ability. We do have, and I'll just promote this, the ability for people to remotely enroll in the study, actually. And we've been working on that process, but we have a remote protocol. People can use their cell phones. They just can go to, search up Bridge to AI voice and find the way to enroll. And so they could do it from anywhere. And we're actually very interested in people doing it from, really widely different geographic settings, including the rural frontier would be amazing. So I think we're trying to get the data so that we could be detecting those kinds of differences.
Yeah, and another thing that has really come out of this project are just the applications and tools that are being developed, many of which are aligned with telehealth. So I know I keep mentioning the symposium, but that's actually going to be one of our topics for the symposium this April or this May. So focusing on the kinds of tools that are being developed and how they can be utilized in different populations.
So I know that may have seemed like a curveball because we were talking about a lot of training. But I asked that question because I'm really curious to know, is there plans to have training modules that are specifically for rural healthcare providers to understand how to integrate this into care?
Well,
think
there
that
should be.
yeah, exactly. There should be. That's the perfect answer. I love that idea, and we should do that. We're going to take this podcast and make some changes to what we do. This is the kind of feedback we need.
That's right.
I'm glad I could be of service.
And speaking of feedback, another way to get involved is the data sets are we have a public feature data set that people can access. They'll have to register through PhysioNet, but it's a great way to see what we've been doing. And if you're interested in seeing what feature data is from this data set, then you can. And we also really appreciate feedback on the data set. So that's a huge part of our education is we send, we evaluate how they're able to interact with the data, and then we're able to improve the functionality and how we collect it.
Excellent. So as we wrap up, I did want to ask, is there other ways that researchers can get involved or engaged with Bridge to AI Voice and just sort of the larger Bridge to AI program in general?
Absolutely. So we have a community of scholars. These are people who have trained with us and who we're actively working with now on projects, who have published. We're really interested in coming to people to teach this. So whether it's going to healthcare organizations, universities, government entities, we can take this on the road, or we can provide modules to study via our learning management system. So that's one way. We're also always excited to partner with industry. So really just visiting our website will kind of teach you how to connect with us. We're on LinkedIn, among other places.
Yeah, and it's easy to find the website at Bridge to AI Voice, just those search terms. The other thing is every spring, and this spring's no exception, we have a voice symposium. We invite people to come on out if they really want to learn a lot. It's been really exciting and fun with great talks, a combination of scientific talks as well as hands-on experiences like a hackathon that I think people have been very enthusiastic about.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andrea and David, for coming on today to tell us a little bit more about the really exciting program, Bridge to AI Voice. Thank you so much for your time and have a wonderful day.
Thanks. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Thanks. Bye.
You have been listening to Decoding the Data Ecosystem, a CFDE Training Center podcast. Be sure to check out our other episodes in this series. Find out more information about CFDE data and tools that may be valuable to your research by visiting our website.